Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Worth It Then, Worth It Now, an ongoing segment I do here where I look at games from yesteryear. Specifically, we've been doing 10 years removed or thereabouts, and I try and line it up with a sale where possible. So today's game is The Witness, which came out on the 26th of January 2016. So a couple of weeks ago, 10 years removed. It's on deep sale at the time of this video. Then I played it at the time. I put a whole bunch of hours into it. I got it. There is actually a wider conversation to be had, bigger than The Witness, I think. But like a huge takeaway, while the fundamental puzzles in this and the kind of world building, the environment, I actually like the understated, a low-key soundtrack, gusting winds and leaves rustling and moving around, the locomotion. Some people complain that it's a bit slow. I don't know, I think it actually adds to immersion. And the puzzles, when they stay in their lane and just are puzzles, I think are quite fun and at its best. But there's so much more to the fanfare around the release of this game, and how at the time this was a moment where Scarlett started to see a crack in the wall. Right, I was, as we've discussed, because if you've been watching some of these previous videos, we are kind of following me 10 years ago. And this is when I really started getting into indie gaming on PC. It's when it started to really actually kick off. Don't get me wrong, the indie Xbox Live arcade scene kickstarted a lot of that. And Jonathan Blow, the guy who made this, and before it, he was heralded for exactly that movement on Xbox Live with the release of Braid. Credit where credit's due. Braid really kickstarted something, and The Witness, you could argue, was the apex of his reputation. He's still around and he's working on a new game at the moment. If you wanted to go to the third act of it all, he did try and re-release Braid Anniversary Edition recently, a few years ago. And most people have no idea that happened. It was released with a whimper, not a lot of success. I think he might have cracked the sads about it on Twitter. Again, I'm not trying to throw shade at the dude. I'm just a consumer sharing my thoughts. You never know, you may even see this video. Who's making videos on The Witness these days, right? So I didn't follow it closely, but my point is, the times now are so radically different to when The Witness was being kind of propped up by all the tastemakers, talking heads. We're talking Giant Bombcast, IGN, and GameSpot, when they had real cachet, trusted and went to them for opinions. All of that's fractured and changed. And these days, it's all very tribal, turbulent, us versus them. But also, there is a better way of curation. I mean, there are people that listen to me and think what I have to say is helpful, and I'm just some random dude in his office with a microphone. So it's a very different world, and I wish Jonathan nothing but success in current day, but now he's up against 18-year-old garage devs releasing 1,000 indie games a week. It's stiff competition. If he truly is the great auteur of the indie space, it'll be interesting to see if he can stand above when it's arguably, at least from a coverage perspective, a bit more of an even playing field. So yeah, to be clear, there's nothing really explicitly wrong with The Witness. It's a solid puzzler when it stays in its lane. I like the environment, I like the world. It very much just lets you off your leash, no hand holding. You go to these panels, they are tied together often by power cables, which are a really good visual clue of where to go next. You explore this world. It's ultimately just little snake puzzles joining dot A to dot B, at least in the beginning, right? But they are panel-bound puzzles that often will introduce new mechanics. There's a lot of them, but in order to make sure that you're taught, there'll be things like a 5-panel section where you go through it and, going from easy to hard. It's actually a masterclass in teaching someone without dialogue, without writing, the show don't tell of going, here's 1 + 1 = 2, and then working your way up to, BOMDAS, etc., to use an analogy. The game falls apart when it tries to go meta, and that's when I really go, okay, there are people that see the world very differently to what I see, and I still think that divide is ever present and even more noticeable in current day between, often I state it as like the artistic versus the more mechanical mindset or class. So statute of limitations is probably up. I'm not going to go into specific spoilers, but the thing about The Witness, the jaw dropping, where your indie nerd gamer art student mate would shake you by the shoulders and say, you have to play this, it's mind blowing. What they're talking about is that there are meta layers, right? I did tell you that the puzzles are framed within these small frames, these little boxes. Without going into specifics, often it pushes meta, right? And meta was not a concept in these days, or at least it wasn't what it is now. Every second bit of media now is subversion, and arguably it's what's killing things like writing in video games. No one wants to write a good story. They want to write the next subversive element. And so there is a subversive layer to this in that, aren't we clever? The puzzles might be bigger than the panel. They might be bigger than the island, etc., right? And to some people that blew their mind, and I'm trying really hard not to be mean-spirited or anything like that, but here I was in the middle of a military career doing a bloody engineering degree at the same time, and to me I was like, oh, that's a cool wrinkle. Is that it? Like, there were some people, I guess, that don't think at a super high level, and to them, being presented with something like this is absolutely earth-shattering. Again, I'm trying to broach this without sounding like an absolute prick, but funnily enough, the people in my circle, also doing engineering degrees at the time, that did play this game, had a similar reaction to me. Oh, yeah, it's cool, it's clever, it's different, right? But you know, I'm not as absolutely gobsmacked by these twists, so to speak. And over the years, you know, if you've ever looked it up or anything like that, people may be calling this game pretentious, things like that. I think the deflection from those that had their socks blown off from is that maybe you don't get it, you didn't understand it. It's like, there is another angle, and that angle is I fully understood it, and I just wasn't that wowed. I'm trying my best to bridge that gap. This isn't to poo-poo, again, the fundamental puzzles. If you pick this up on sale for a couple of bucks to play some puzzles, it's actually pretty good. And even when it does some of the meta layer puzzles, they're all right. But the problem for me, as best as I can lay it out, is when you move from the grounded, rule-based, what I would call an actual puzzle, a problem to be solved, using the engineering or advanced math concept as an anchor, right? 1 + 1 = 2. You can't really get that wrong. If you're getting it wrong, you're doing it wrong. Like, there is a closed system that it is bound within. There is a rule-based system. And this is why when I have these conversations, I talk about things like riddles and how I despise riddles, because ultimately what makes a riddle good, and I use that term very loosely, is the abstraction of the answer versus the question, and even the construction of the riddle usually being back to front. I know I'm going down a little bit of a path, but just bear with me. And over the years that I've walked this earth, my encounters with people that love riddles, that is a red flag to me, and it's often someone that's not particularly good at puzzles. And rather, again, this is anecdotal, but it's been proven so many times, there seems to be some sort of enjoyment, less in the puzzle, but more in that brief exchange where there's a power imbalance, where I know the answer to the cryptic riddle and you do not. And the hypothetical I, the person who is sitting there grinning while you try and figure out this riddle through cryptic abstraction and trying to, you know, what's black and white and red all over. Actually, that's a perfect example of a big part of why I don't like it, because you could say a sunburnt zebra, or you could say a newspaper, and inevitably you're gonna annoy, maybe you should just say both and upset the riddle person for getting it wrong, when in truth you're actually right on both counts. That example actually encapsulates exactly what I'm trying to get at. I find people that enjoy riddles enjoy knowing the answer that you don't have, and in that moment enjoy being, you know, in quotation, more clever than you. But the truth is, as soon as you step outside of the bounds of rules and puzzles and 1 + 1 = 2, you get into the realm of multiple answers depending on the abstraction layers that you want to go through. And this is why you get varying degrees of good riddles, depending on, well, how stupid the riddle maker was. So consider a hypothetical. Let's say I give you a puzzle panel in the witness, and we use our fundamental example of 1 + 1 = and you write 2, right? That's good, that's fine. What if it says blank + 1 = 2? Or no, blank + 1 = whatever, right? And when I say blank, it could be, I don't know, maybe the screen's cracked, or half of it's missing, or it's faded out, or the one's fallen off on the floor, so you got to root around in the bushes and look for the one to figure it out, right? What do you call that, right? It's creating an abstraction layer of shit on top of a puzzle. You can't solve the puzzle because it's not actually about solving the puzzle. Not yet, at least. Now it's about what's this clever environmental crap that I've put in the way to obfuscate your ability to to solve the puzzle. And to me, that is much more akin to riddles. Look how clever I am. You have to count the bloody apples on a tree branch. Maybe one's broken off. This sign's twisted around back to front. So you're not going to get the puzzle right until you intuit that. You have to go around a tree and follow this cable. So the tree that you were looking at is actually back to front, but you wouldn't know that because the way the puzzle's presented in its closed system, it doesn't telegraph that. So a lot of the clever, abstract thinking, and I'm using bloody quotations sitting here in front of my microphone, is in that. And if that shit infuriates you and makes you not want to engage with the game, I'm with you there, brother. And as much as I enjoyed coming back and revisiting some of these puzzles, I've flown through them pretty fast. I've gone through about 2 or 3 biomes just in, a short time. It is getting into that abstraction layer, that riddle layer, where the only person that really thinks they're clever is the person who constructed the riddle. And it is a little bit of a bait and switch because I'm here to play puzzles. Everything about your game is telegraphed to be puzzles. In fairness, you don't want to give away your twist, I get it. But at a certain point, when is it an actual bait and switch and a false bill of sale where instead of just letting me solve the puzzles, you're abstracting and obfuscating them with these cryptic nonsense meta island components? And then this is all tied together with the reward system, which will be finding audio and video logs of ultimately think pieces that, again, not to be mean, I mean, it's not like I talk about this. It's not like I have a huge philosophy channel or I hold a bloody knitting circle where we exchange these ideas, but the modern phenomenon of men thinking about the Roman Empire daily and how that blows people's minds, that's a thing. Like, it might not necessarily be the Roman Empire specifically, but it illustrates a huge misunderstanding of a significant large chunk of male population of people that I've encountered over the years. I'm one of those guys that thinks about ancient history and all that sort of stuff. And, to follow that scenario and analogy further, it's not necessarily just, I want to know about this battle and what happened there. That is a curiosity that I pursue occasionally, but often it is like, how do empires rise and fall? And, the Roman Empire is a common touchstone. It's almost manufactured for people to be able to discuss and comprehend this topic. How does such a powerful mirror of the American Empire fall? How can we be living in something and how would this not fall in turn? But my point is, when you present this idea to a certain subset of the population, it actually blows their mind because they don't critically think. They don't, in their quiet moments, just wander and think about all these wonderful, interesting ideas. And then there's a chunk of population which I inhabit where we do think about this stuff. And it can range. It's not all necessarily history. It can be deep questions about meanings of life and philosophy and love and all sorts of interesting stuff that, is just normal to think about and comprehend. And so while I try not to call the witness pretentious, in turn, I recognize that I could sound pretentious by saying the ideas proffered up, the think pieces suggested, the meta layers and the cryptics and the obfuscation, all of that package, to some people, it's going to blow your mind. But I think it's also worth recognizing, if you are that person, there's a big chunk of us that it doesn't really rock our foundation, because this is stuff that I was thinking about 10 years ago anyway. Anyway, this has turned into an almost philosophical waffle, which is something I try not to do. The puzzles are fine. They're good, right? Some people are going to have their socks blown off when this game drops its pennies. Other people are going to say, wow, there is actually 2 different types of people in society. Or it's not just 2, right? In this instance, I'm drawing a line, but there are different people at different levels. And I suppose at my most arrogant, my most pretentious it'll be, those that were banging the drum and telling everyone, screaming from the hills that the witness was the greatest thing that ever happened, to me represented a certain class of person that didn't realize they are surrounded by smarter people that have already had similar epiphanies, but instead they just internalize it as opposed to trying to wake up their fellow man. Anyway, a bit deep for this morning, but there it is. The Witness. Check it out yourself. Make your own judgment call. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you need your world rocked a little bit. All right, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.